Okay, we're here with John Bell, the Head of Strategy and Partnerships from Philips Research. I wanted to start with a question that has been coming up over and over within the conference that we've seen so far, more from an academic perspective. We're really interested to hear more of a business perspective, and that's why we think it's fantastic that you're here, so thank you very much. But we're wanting to know, what is it that drives Philips to engage with universities?
Yeah, there's many things which drive us to work with universities. So one of them is, of course, to get early access to knowledge and ideas, which is typically what is happening at universities. The other thing is talent, get access to talent and make sure that we get the brightest of the brightest to come and work for Philips. Sometimes IP, but that's only, it's not so often happening that you can find IP which is already to take up and bring into our products. We also have exchange of people, so we have part-time professors working at Philips, being 1 day or 2 day a week professor at the university, about 25. We have many students coming into our organization, PhDs as well, so it's a multitude of things.
Okay, it sounds really interesting to have so many different types of cooperation. What we've been seeing in some of our research is that an academic doesn't just cooperate in one type of way with business. It's usually in many different types, and this seems to be reflective of what's happening in Philips.
Exactly. For us, it's very important to work with some universities on very specific topics, and that's fine. But with other ones, we would like to do more, and of course we would like to see all talent, but we cannot afford, we just don't have the bandwidth to work with hundreds or thousands of all the universities in the world, to have strategic relationships with them and say, hey, we want to have your talent, we want to know what your competences are, what your knowledge is, and your IP, so bring that all to us, or let's work on it. It's not possible. But on very specific things, yes.
Well, as head of strategy, obviously you're talking very much at a strategic level, perhaps more of a high level. How do you drive it from the bottom up? Is there any efforts to actually, how do you get the people within Philips as well as the academics motivated to work for each other or work with each other?
Typically what you see with the researchers in general, whether they are at universities or in companies like ours, the bottom-up thing works almost automatically. And that's the power. So if we would get away from the bottom-up and only say top-down, it will not work. So people need to find each other and get some benefits out of that and feel that it works, there's a fit, there's a click, and then they will look for each other and start to cooperate. Starting on a project, starting on the content, that's fine. And we look then top down and say, hey, can we broaden it? Should we broaden that? Yes, no? No? Okay, just leave it. Should we broaden? Yes, okay, let's see what we can do.
Okay, well that leads on to further things that we saw in our discussion panel yesterday, where there's a lot of talk about how important relationships are in university business collaboration and having a mutual trust and understanding. How, as the head of strategy, how do you actually foster this? These relationships.
Yeah, the relationship, especially if you make them more strategic, you need to do multi-level relationship management. So you need to have the individuals working together. They should work together. They will build up trust, because once they work together, they will find out, hey, it works. I can call this person, yes, no. But you should also do it at the top. So what we typically do for the very strategic relationships, that we have the head of research from our organization, the CEO, sitting together with the head of the university, and they agree on the direction. Of course, we prepare that on both sides, and we have levels in between who feel responsible for the content of an overall program. So we try to build up the relationships and the trust at all those levels, because the big risk is if you build up only on individual level of one person with another, and that person leaves either on our side or on their side, the whole relationship would be gone, and that's not how it should be.
Okay, so it sounds like a multi-level strategic, stairways, if you like.
Yep.
Okay, it's interesting. We're talking about the benefits, obviously, of collaborating with the university, and there are obviously many benefits of that, but there are also some barriers, and we'd love to hear from a business perspective what those barriers might be.
Yeah, I think there are barriers like always. If you work together with between companies, there are barriers. If you work together with universities, there are barriers. And some of them lay in our hands that we are the barrier. In sometimes we just don't have the mindset right, or the processes right, or we take too much time from the legal perspective, or we strangle the universities with our ideas of what all must be done, and then they say, oh, wait a minute. And there are barriers on the side of the universities as well. Sometimes the researcher themselves, where they just have a mindset, I want to do everything I want to do. So who are you to work with me, more or less? The type of researcher we don't see too often anymore, I must admit. The other thing is that there's a big challenge in universities to get money. So they sometimes see companies as just a money or an ATM. If you just push a button, you get money out of that. And that's not how it works. We don't want to be a money provider, just a bank to give money and never get something in return. For us, the total relationship, including money, including in-kind, including the close cooperation, is much more important. Sometimes in universities you see that the top level, the board, is not able to influence the layers below. And then when you try to build up the multi-level cooperation, it gets stuck. Because when the top says yes and then the bottom says, I don't know what the board wants, but I don't want this, then it will not happen. So that's a challenge. And sometimes one other challenge is that some people in universities, and typically people working around the tech transfer offices, they sometimes have targets to get as much money out of potential IP. And then they think, wow, this is a big company, they have a lot of money, we might have interesting IP, let's sell it for as much as possible and get all the benefits now, and then the risks at the company. While at the same time, companies need to invest so much more before an idea or some IP even becomes in the market, becomes successful in the market, and becomes valuable.
Okay, so just talking about the intermediary, do you find that, if we didn't have the intermediary there, do you find that the intermediary is a good thing to have somebody sitting between the two organisations, coordinating on both sides, having an understanding of both sides? Or do you find that an academic, for example, with industry experience can work quite well with Philips?
Yeah, I don't believe in intermediaries in this role. So it's very unlogical. If you want to marry somebody, you don't want to have an intermediary sitting the whole day with you to say, oh, now you say this. So no, it must come from the both sides themselves, and it takes time to learn to talk to each other and to understand each other. And then your example helps. If you have people at the university who have been also in business before, they understand the language. And the other way around. Also in our organization we have many people with an academic background. So that also helps.
Project ourselves 5, 10, 15 years into the future. Where do you see collaboration with the universities going? Do you see it becoming more open? And in what sort of ways do you see this occurring?
I would expect it to be much, much, much more open. In a way that universities tend to sit less on their IP and want to have different targets and say, hey, my target is to make sure that my ideas are being used for society. And that would help a lot. Of course, they still will benefit from that. So I would see that more happening, especially with the upcome of the rise of many universities in countries where there are thousands, 10,000 of great professors, which are hardly touching the surface at this moment, like Russia and India and China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Africa, Latin America. So there are a lot of things which will come out of there, and they will behave also to get a better position, I think, in a different way than the established universities are doing today towards companies, I would expect.
Okay. Well, I think from what we
But I don't have a crystal ball, sorry.
Of course not. We all wish we could see out of the future. But from what we saw in your presentation and from the discussion we've had today, I think Philips Research are really providing an excellent example, something that we can perhaps use as a template, if you like, or a way, or take some examples out of that. So, John Bell, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.